Just to briefly introduce myself, my name is Wairimu Karanja. I'm a lawyer from Kenya, energy lawyer, and I'm also the University of Dundee Extractives Hub in Kenya. It's a pleasure for me to be part of this broadcast, and it's also a pleasure to contribute to Victoria Nalule's book on energy transitions in East Africa. So thank you very much, Victoria. I will be explaining the book chapter that I have co-authored with Njenga on social license to operate in the East African oil and gas sector. And I also have slides that will lead me in sharing my presentation, which I will share with you shortly. Let me just see my share screen. So I'll first start off with an introduction of the social license to operate. And then I will proceed to discuss some of the issues that we have seen in East Africa oil and gas pertaining to the social license to operate. I will also discuss East Africa oil and gas laws and how they affect the social license to operate. I'll discuss international initiatives on social license to operate, and I will also discuss private companies' initiatives on social license to operate in East Africa, and I will then give my conclusion. So, as I mentioned, this book chapter is for a book on the energy transition in East Africa that is edited by Victoria Nalule, Noreen Kilundugu, and Tom Ayobare. With my co-author, Njenga, we are making a book contribution on the social license to operate in the East African oil and gas sector. Now, East Africa has, obviously the East African community has 5 countries, Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, Rwanda, and Burundi. And there is also an applicant in the East African community, Sudan. We shall concentrate in our book chapter on Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda as the key extractive economies in East Africa. Like many developing countries, the East African energy sector has moved from a purely economic-driven development to encompass social factors and social considerations such as social license to operate, such as local content, such as technology transfer, and training and capacity building for cities. Now, the social license to operate has been described by Thompson and Butler as existing when a project has an ongoing approval within the local community and relevant stakeholders. So you can consider it an informal right wielded by the community. And this is the introduction that we're going to give in chapter 1 of our contribution. Social license to operate has, in its first year, a level of acceptance where the consent granted by the community is enough to get the project up and running. But the project also needs to continue. And for many licensees in the oil and gas sector, this means concessions of several years, 10, 20 plus years. Now, Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda all have the production sharing model of oil and gas contracting. So you're looking at a concession or a production sharing agreement that's going to run over 20 years. So what is a community? What is a community of relevant stakeholders? This includes any communities, groups, persons, rights, or organizations that may not necessarily be within the geographical area of the operations, but is affected by the operation. Now, in the second chapter of our discussion, we look at some of the examples of the East African issues that have arisen, or rather the issues that East Africa has seen when it comes to what has happened when there is not enough community engagement or not enough social license to operate. Now, for the Kenyans, you know that we launched the early oil pilot scheme in June 2018, and that has is now coming to an end, the first period of POPs. What happened is within 3 weeks of the flagging off of the EOPS scheme by the government of Kenya and Nalule Oil, which is the concessionaire up in the north of Kenya in Lokichar, there were community protests that halted operations for about 2 weeks to a month. These were over concerns by the Turkana community about job opportunities, how local supply tenders had been awarded and whether the community had worked, and also the fact that there had been no clarity, and there is still to be a bit of clarity on how the community's 5% share of oil and gas proceeds is to be allocated. Now that's for Kenya. For Tanzania, there have been issues that have been seen or experienced by communities along the line of the East Africa oil and gas pipeline that was entered into when Tanzania and Uganda entered into an intergovernmental agreement for the pipelining of Ugandan oil to the Tanzanian coastline. In Uganda, Uganda has huge oil deposits in the Lake Alban Rift region. And Nalule Oil and Total have a joint venture. Now, there has also been seen issues of complaints of land grabbing, of population displacement, of inadequate compensation, of pollution by the community. These are issues that affect the social license to operate and can be dealt with when the community is substantively engaged in discussions and planning in what we call participation. Now, I'll then move on to discuss what we have in our next chapter, which is on the laws that East Africa has passed that affect public participation and the social license to operate. Kenya has a constitution of 2010 that concentrates a great deal on socio-economic rights. Socio-economic rights are provided more substantively than we saw before in the old constitution. And there is substantive provisions on the requirement as a fundamental right for public participation when it comes to lawmaking, and also when it comes to conclusion of extractive mineral and mineral oil contracts. There is a requirement that Parliament should ratify all contracts that relate to extractives, minerals and mineral oils. Kenya recently, in March 2019, enacted a Petroleum Act that repealed a really old act that was enacted in 1984. And that Petroleum Act at Section 25 provides that the community should be permitted to participate in the process of reviewing and awarding permits. The community also has a right under that Petroleum Act to be educated and sensitized on petroleum operations, to have prior and informed consent on petroleum operations. Now, petroleum revenues, as I mentioned in Kenya, are to be shared 75% by the national government, 20% to the county government, and 5% to the community. And the question when it comes to the community has been, well, how do you share to the community this 5%? There are also other laws that provide for public participation and therefore social license to operate. These include the Environmental Management and Coordination Act of 1999 that requires that public participation should be had when it comes to the consideration and the granting of environmental impact assessment licenses. There is also a public participation bill of 2019 that I should mention has been a bill since around 2015 that provides again for more robust provisions when it comes to public participation in matters relating to government decision. Tanzania also has robust provisions on oil and gas and the social license to operate. We have the Petroleum Act of 2015. Tanzania is a member of, It's an implementing country of the Extractive Industry Transparency Initiative, and it has its Tanzania Extractive Industry Transparency and Accountability Act, and it also has the Oil and Gas Revenues Management Act of 20. Tanzania also has a National Energy Policy of 2015 that provides for public participation and notes that public expectations on management of oil and gas has increased since the past. And Tanzania also has an Environmental Management Act of 2004 that includes the principle of public participation in environmental planning and in the consideration on and granting of environmental impact assessment licenses. I move on to Uganda. Uganda has a constitution of 1995 that was amended in 2015. And the Uganda constitution provides that there should be maximum social and cultural well-being of the people in all developmental efforts. Uganda also has a Petroleum Exploration and Production Act of 2015 and a National Environment Management Act of 2019 that provides for public participation in the environmental impact assessment process. Now, we also looked, when looking at SLO, we also looked at other countries. We noted other African countries, sorry. We noted that in Angola, the Petroleum Activity Law incorporates provisions dealing with local content, its local employment and local procurement of goods and services. And that encompasses to a degree social license to operate. The Democratic Republic of Congo also has a hydrocarbons code of 2016 that again provides for local content. Ghana also has robust local content provisions, and again, local content contributes to social license to operate. And Nigeria also has an Oil and Gas Industry Content Development Act of 2010, which again encompasses elements of social license. I move on to international initiatives on social license. And by international initiatives, I mean international treaties and international measures that guarantee public participation and hence a social license to operate from the community if that is done well. We have the Rio Declaration on Environment and Development of 1992 that provides for the participation of all concerned citizens in environmental issues. We also have the UN Global Compact and the Equator Principles. The Equator Principles is a set of principles that is signed onto by various development financiers, where if they are financing a development, then the developer has to comply with the Equator Principles. We also have the World Bank Group's Environmental Health and Safety Guidelines of 2007, which provides for social license, which provides for, again, community engagement and public participation during project appraisal, including in environmental health and safety matters. And tagged onto that is the International Finance Corporation, or IFC, performance standards, which apply to all projects that are financed by the IFC, again, which encompass principles of community engagement and public participation. We also have private companies that engage the community in their own accord for there to be a social license. Remember, as a private company, you are more concerned, private companies are more concerned about community engagement because they are directly affected if there is no social license required from the community. Whereas the government legislates, it is the private company that is on the ground, it is the private company that is going to lose revenues, or that is going to lose man hours, or is going to lose profit if there is disruption of the project because of community. And we know that oil and gas projects are very capital intensive. The drilling rigs that are rented at, 75, $1,000 a day to some extent. So you need to make sure that you have community engagement. A lot of times the social license to operate is obtained by private companies through corporate social responsibility or CSR. And we all know in our individual countries of companies that are engaged in very aggressive corporate social responsibility. Now, Tallow Oil in Kenya has a 2017 human rights policy statement in which it promises to engage communities who are affected by its projects. And it also has engaged the community in northern Kenya in consultation processes that are tiered. And it has also invested in community benefits initiatives, including scholarship programs. And some of you may have benefited from some of the scholarship programs. In Tanzania, in the Mtwara Natural Gas Exploration Area, Shell Tanzania, which is the concessionaire there, has reported to have set aside funds to the tune of $280,000 in community health care and ambulance services for the community. Once the community sees you doing good, then the impact on the companies that you get a social license to operate. In Uganda, the Tallow and Total Consortium has a dedicated oil and gas sector in the Uganda Museum, which is aimed at educating and increasing awareness on oil and gas industry to stakeholders. Total E&P has also offered local and international sponsorship through its oil and gas program. So you can see there are companies that are heavily engaged in corporate social responsibility in a bid to have a social license to operate. Now, where does this take us when it comes to concluding remarks, which is where we end our book chapter? SLO, or social license to operate, affects a company because it means that when a company has a social license to operate, it is being accepted by the community of stakeholders. When that geographic community accepts your project, or when the national community accepts your project, or when the international community accepts your project, you get validation. Your project gets validation, and hence you're able to operate without a lot of disruption. It is important for there to be adequate consideration of the social license to operate and for it to be covered in both corporate social responsibility and legislative measures by governments. Gone are the days when developing country governments used to be concerned more about the economic activity. Let's get development in, let's get investors in. Who cares what the community thinks? Who cares what the local nationals think? Gone are those days. There has to be sustainable development, and sustainable development means that the government and the investors themselves have to care about the community and the social license to operate from the community. There needs to be effective management of operations, there needs to be clear public participation, and there needs to be effective management of communication and information flow so that communities have prior and informed consent. Sometimes this may mean that circulars or documents are translated in the local language, because as you know, a lot of these infrastructure development activities, including oil and gas, are in marginalized areas or areas where there are marginalized communities, where the literacy level is low. So you might need translations or you might need interpreters in public gatherings or public barazas. Voluntary CSR is not enough to achieve a social license to operate. National and regional governments should continuously enact statutory intervention to create binding social license to operate, because also as a political tool, when the community accepts a project, that project is going to benefit the country. And that looks good on the government of the day when there is sustainable development that is continuing in the country. And with that, I thank you on behalf of myself, my co-author, Nduta Njenga, and my associate, Faye Nzioka, who was instrumental in preparing the slides for today's presentation. My email address is on the link that you see on the PowerPoint slide, and you can also visit our website for further information about W&Co. And with that, I am ready to take any questions you may have. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Wairimu. I see Abdul has raised his hand. Abdul, I've permitted you to speak. Would you please address your question to Wairimu? Nyang, did you have a question?
I don't have a question, but I'm just amazed what she did. It was really good, and I've learned a lot. A lot of researchers have been citing how social license to operate in South Sudan has been. It's great, but it's not even there. So she mentioned the issue of, is it enough? We should not be having these things in document and not being implemented. The interpretation, putting those policies in a local language so that local communities can understand them is really great. I'm really happy to watch this presentation. Thank you, Wairimu.
Wairimu, I would like to ask, with respect to your chapter and the entire theme of the book project, we're seeing companies now moving towards low carbon economy. So I would like your opinion on what does the future hold for social license to operate, or with respect to the relationship between host communities and companies, especially now that we are moving towards energy transitions. Do you think there will be any changes, or it will just, the relationship will stay constant?
Well, I think that with the energy transition, and especially with the concerns when it comes to environmental degradation, social health, climate change, we will see more community engagement and more community education and more questions coming from the community about the effects of a project on community health. And I'll give you an example that that we have seen in Kenya, especially in the mining industry. Now, Kenya has a very robust civil society, and a lot of civil society activism has been going on about the climate change impact of some of the developments that we see. So an instance is we have the Mui coal basin, where billions of dollars of coal deposits have been discovered in Mui coal. And one of the issues that has come about is that the members of the community in the county, in Kitui County, have had lodged court cases and even a parliamentary petition questioning the impact of the coal project and whether community health is affected. We have also had one of the coal energy projects, electricity projects, that have been halted because of, again, court cases questioning the effects, questioning whether the energy that is going to be produced is going to be environmentally friendly and friendly to community health and safety. So we see a lot of activism. So again, there needs to be more information flow going out to the community, to civil society, more community engagement in barazas, because I think when there is more communication, when the community knows what is going on, when people know what is going on, when people are involved in the environmental impact assessment process, they are more accepting of the project than if they feel that the project is couched in secrecy. So I think when it comes to the energy transition, I think we will probably have more community acceptance of sustainable development projects than of predominantly carbon-heavy projects, again, because of the soup that has been running throughout the world and throughout Africa. I hope that answers your question, Victoria.
Yes, it does. And then, do you have any questions from the participants? If not, I would like to address the issue of how do we see social license to operate post-COVID-19? Because now we've seen lots of companies losing money, or most of them are going into bankruptcy. So we're wondering what will happen to this relationship, because initially the companies were more interested to really build the relationship with the host communities. And some of them, like in Uganda, I visited, were the place where I think Talo is operating from, and you could see they're establishing developmental infrastructure like schools, like hospitals, and this is all part of like gaining the social license to operate. But now with the decline, with the decline in oil prices and also this current pandemic, I'm of the opinion that this relationship might a little bit change, especially with the financial. With the financial part of it, or the developmental infrastructure that host communities have been enjoying. So in your opinion, do you think that the relationship between host communities and also the oil and gas companies is likely to change post-COVID-19?
I would say just purely from, I guess, a commercial sense perspective, we will see a bit of change and a bit of, I would say, what's the word? Well, change and maybe a shifting of attention from the old style ways of achieving social license to operate to, say, an inventiveness when it comes to adopting technology. Because companies will want to engage in CSR, but perhaps not pouring in as much money as they used to in physical infrastructure like schools or health centers. We will probably see more technological interventions, more technological investment into, say, information flow. So maybe having dedicated more activity on Twitter, more activity on the website, more activity using mobile apps, and again, moving some of their CSR activities to a technology platform. So we have physical schools, yes, but also moving the physical schools into Zoom learning or Google Class learning, especially during COVID. And I know some of these interventions are going to be had after COVID-19. I think we will also see a shift to more sort of self assistance from the companies, to self-help groups that are taking that capital into more sustainable investment by the community. So rather than, say, providing food drives or, that kind of thing, to more of, women's groups that are engaged in business activities, then getting more funding. But I do not think that there will be a complete freeze in engagement, again, because coming out of COVID, you're going to be looking to increase your revenues, and you're going to be looking to keep your projects open. And how you keep your projects open is by keeping the community continuously engaged. And part of cutting costs, I think, and engaging the community is, again, we will probably see more hiring of community members in projects, which will be a double effort or a double benefit of getting the social license, maintaining the social license to operate, and also cutting costs, because locally based labor will eventually on your balance sheet be cheaper than outsourcing labor from, consultants who you bring in from other regions or from other countries.
Thank you very much, Wairimu. Unless if we have any other questions, I would invite you to make your concluding remarks, and then that will be the end of our webinar.
All right. Well, first of all is to thank you, Victoria, and to thank Amy, and to thank Tom Ayabara and Noreen Kiburu, who are the editors of the book project on the energy transition in Africa. I'd also like to thank my co-author, Gitan Jenga, who could not be here with us. And I'd also like to thank my associate, Faye Nzioka, again, who was very instrumental in the preparations for today's session. I'd like to invite everybody to please obtain the book and to look forward to updates from Victoria Nalule. There are various chapters that are not only related to social license to operate, but other factors. I know one of my very good friends and colleagues, Alaka Lugonzo, has co-authored an article on gender dimensions. So the book is going to be a one of its kind, I think, when it comes to dealing with energy transition issues in Africa. I think it's going to be a first of its kind, and I would welcome everyone to sign up for the book. I see Dennis Okore, you're asking if the book will be available in Kenya. I believe the book will be available in both hard copy and soft copy. It is published by Palgrave Macmillan, and Dr. Victoria Nalule is going to be providing all the details. So Dennis, what I would advise you is please send a response email to Victoria Nalule, and she'll give you all the details about how you can obtain them. Once again, thank you very much, Victoria, and I look forward to receiving my personal copy of the book and learning more about the energy transition in Africa. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Wairimu, and thanks to Nduta, who hasn't joined us today, but is also a co-author in this book chapter. Stay tuned, and thank you very much. Have a lovely day. This marks the end of our webinar. Bye-bye.